Hey guys, welcome back to Mad About Skin. We all love Korean sunscreens, the light, airy finish, the advanced UV filters, and the beautifully affordable price point. It's for good reason that most of us will have tried a Korean sunscreen at some point in the last year. However, when is a Korean sunscreen not a Korean sunscreen? Well, when it's manufactured in the US, and this is causing a little bit of controversy in the skincare community. In today's video, I want to talk to you about some of the things going on in the Korean sunscreen industry, what us as consumers have to watch out for so that they can make informed decisions when it comes to our own skincare routines. Sit back, relax, let's talk some Korean sunscreen updates. Now, in today's video, I'm going to share with you everything you guys need to know when it comes to selecting a Korean sunscreen, making sure that you're buying the right version, delivering the right outcomes that you're looking for in terms of your skin, and of course, protecting us all day long. However, when it comes to sunscreens, different ones will appeal best to different people. So it's always worth bearing that in mind. And in that spirit, I would love for you guys to sound off with your favorite Korean sunscreen of the moment down in the comment section below. Shout it, don't gatekeep it, because I honestly love to hear from you guys each and every single day. And the recommendations that you make often do shape the products that I try out and review here on the channel in the future. I'm really keen to bring you guys the latest information, whatever it is, when it comes to skincare, because as consumers, the more info we have, the better decisions we can make. So if you appreciate this style of update video, the very best way of demonstrating that is by reaching down and giving the video a big thumbs up and a like. The more likes a video gets, the more widely YouTube will distribute it on its platform, and I genuinely think this is a message that needs to be heard loud and clear. So if you want to help me out in achieving that, liking the video is the best way of doing it. Now, without further ado, let's cut that waffle and delve straight on in. So Korean sunscreens, they've taken the world and the skincare community by storm over the past 5 years. People just love the finish that they deliver. Ultimately, you reach for a Korean sunscreen and you won't even know that you're wearing it. Gone are the days, the thick, heavy, gloopy sunscreens that we had to endure in the past. Now we can actually reach for and actually enjoy our sunscreen application. And that really is quite a modern revelation. I remember growing up and actually actively avoiding sunscreen because of the way that it felt on the skin. This isn't something I do anymore. I enjoy applying my sunscreen as the last step in my morning routine, and there are some really great formulas out there. That is, unless you live in the US, where as a result of regulations, the access to quality Korean sunscreens isn't as easy as it once was. Now, don't think just because you're not living in the US that you're off the hook here, like breathing a sigh of relief, because actually, whilst the issues stem from the US, they actually have global implications, and it's something that we all have to be aware of no matter where we happen to be shopping from. So we're going to talk about it all in today's video. Let's quickly start with like a road traveled so far. So Korean sunscreens are so amazing because they use new generation filters. Science moves on year after year. There's new innovation, new discoveries, new research, and sunscreen filters have really advanced a lot in the last 10 years. That's why we now have access to ones that don't feel heavy, sticky, greasy on the skin. These are the new generation filters that just have a more lightweight finish. They also provide greater UV protection too. So they not only feel better, but they actually deliver better quality protection. They protect against generally broader spectrums of light, which just means you're getting that locked in protection in a way that actually we weren't with some of the older style filters. Also, I always say to people, a sunscreen only actually works if you apply it. If something feels thick, heavy and gloopy, you often don't apply enough, or you'll skip reapplications because you're just almost dreading it. That doesn't work. Sunscreen only works if it's on the skin. And so these new generation sunscreens, these Korean sunscreens work so well because people want to apply them, they want to reapply them, and they get into the habit of doing this, which just increases the level of protection we're giving the skin. Now, most countries in the world have embraced these new generation filters, understanding that they perform better and people actively enjoy applying them, which is definitely a benefit. That's with the exception of the US. The US sunscreen industry is regulated by the FDA, and the FDA haven't updated their sunscreen rules for the best part of 20 plus years. So as a result, none of these new generation filters are actually acknowledged as being sun protection in the US. That is mind-boggling. It is crazy, I know. And this is something we have talked about on the channel before, but they don't look like they're going to be shifting their stance anytime soon. There is the potential of them approving one new generation filter potentially in the next year, but that's just one. They're still sticking rigidly to the outdated older generation ones, which is causing a lot of the problem. So Korean sunscreens adhere to these new generation filters, which is why we all love them. But recently, the FDA has actually tightened up their restrictions. Whilst they didn't acknowledge that these new generation filters were actual sunscreen filters, they were happy to let it slide, happy to let US consumers buy and import Korean skincare products into the US, and kind of turned a blind eye to the fact that they're importing sunscreens which wouldn't actually be allowed to be sold physically retailers in the US. That all changed about 8 months ago, where they said, no, we're going to be really tightening down our custom checks and prohibiting the importation of Korean sunscreens which don't adhere to strict FDA standards. As a result of that, brands went into full-on panic mode. They couldn't sell actively into the US market, which is obviously the world's biggest skincare and sunscreen market, and they were worried about losing out on all that revenue. So they created a workaround and they developed US-specific versions of their favorite sunscreens. So first of all, Beauty of Joseon did it. This is the viral Beauty of Joseon Rice Relief Sunscreen, an absolute A+ Korean sunscreen, which now has a US counterpart, which you see here, and I broke the name of this one down, which is the Daily Release SPF. This doesn't actually have the same SPF protection. The US one is SPF 40 versus SPF 50 plus in the Korean version. It has completely different filters and a completely different base profile. It is a completely different sunscreen, but in very similar packaging, designed to look the same, as this is the one that they're legally able to sell in the US. The same then went for Skin 1004. They had this, their viral Hyaluronic Water Fit Sun Serum. This, again, SPF 50 plus, locked in Korean protection. They now have an equivalent US version, looks very similar, but is an entirely different product. And I think things really reached peak confusion when Numbuzin launched their now viral 9+ sunscreen line. They launched their Dewy Sun Essence, which is currently, at the time of filming, the world's best-selling Korean sunscreen. People are falling over themselves to get their hands on this. It's constantly sold out because it is so popular. Everybody loves it, that beautiful glowy look to the skin, all the amazing NAD and peptide anti-aging action. This is truly, if you can't tell already, one of my favourite sunscreens. Again, Numbuzin came out with a US version, which is their Bio Defense sunscreen. Different formula, completely different finish on the skin, and people are really shocked that when their product arrived on their doorstep, it wasn't what they were expecting. And this is the key thing here, and where it gets a little bit confusing for the consumer. If you're shopping in the US, chances are with any of these big Korean skincare brands, you won't be getting the Korean versions. The lightweight, the beautiful, elegant, advanced formulas. You're going to be getting the US compliant equivalent, which, generally speaking, especially in the terms of Numbuzin, much heavier, much thicker, and much dewier, some might say greasier looking on the skin. If you're shopping elsewhere, you should be able to buy the original. But buyer beware. And this is really the crux of today's video. And what I want to hammer home is make sure you know what you're buying. Because the issue is a lot of the big online Korean retailers are shipping out the US version to non-US customers. Meaning, if you're shopping outside of the US, you might be getting the US version, which is not as advanced, not as elegant on the skin, not what we wanted, getting it and being disappointed, applying it to skin and thinking, this isn't what every content creator promised me when they said this was like the best sunscreen they'd ever tried. This is actually reminiscent of those old style sunscreens that our mothers used to chase us around the beach trying to apply. Not good. What's going on? What's going on is you've got the wrong version. And this is where it becomes really key that as consumers, we do our due diligence and we make sure we know what we're buying. Before you buy a Korean sunscreen, reach out to the retailer and say, which version are you sending me? Are you sending the new version designed for the US market, which I wouldn't recommend unless you're from the US, or are you sending me the original Korean style product, which is going to be delivering you all those enhanced benefits? Know what you're buying, and that way, when it arrives, you've already done the work. There are a couple of ways of telling the two apart. So any US compliant sunscreen will have to have something called a drugs fact label on the back. So turn the sunscreen, and if it has something titled drugs facts, you know it's the US version of any sunscreen. Whatever brand we're talking about, it's the US version. Also, the US doesn't use the PA+++ system. That's not allowed by the FDA. So if your product says PA+++, that means it's the Korean version, because that's their way of demonstrating the level of UVA protection that product gives. America doesn't have the equivalent of that and the FDA doesn't permit it. So you won't see that PA rating on any of the US formulated sunscreens. Those are the two key ways of doing it. Ultimately, I think if you can access it, you're always better going for the original Korean sunscreen version, the one made in Korea, delivering all that next level technology and just the better application. If you're watching this from the US though, I would say the US versions of these famous Korean sunscreens are still better than a lot of the other sunscreens on the market. I know it's going to be disappointing, and this video definitely isn't in any way directed at the US consumer, who I absolutely adore. It's directed at the FDA and their inability, their lack of flexibility around, approving new filters, which would of course benefit the US consumer. If you're watching this from the US versions of these sunscreens are still better than a lot of the commercially available sunscreens. So whilst they might not be as good as the original, they are still a step up. They are a little heavier. They take a bit more work in terms of absorption into the skin, and they will look a little dewier on the skin than what a lot of people might like. However, what you can do is just powder it down with a translucent powder. That will take the shine off. You can work it in and it will eventually go in synergy with the skin, and it might just take a little bit of work. I would say with the US versions, my top tip will be to do 2 thinner layers as opposed to 1 thick layer. That way it will absorb that a little bit better and give a nicer look on the skin. That's a little hack that I'll share with you to get around that. If you are crafty, you can still get your hands on some of the original versions if you're shopping from within the US. Some of the online retailers will still ship them. You do have to be a little creative and a little crafty. I also created my own sunscreen. This is the Mad About Skin Protect and Hydrate sunscreen using new generation filters. And the FDA enforcement action is all on large, big brands, big name brands. So you can still import the smaller indie brands into the US, and that hasn't actually changed. So this uses newer generation filters and it gives a very similar finish to the Korean sunscreens that we all love. So if you're watching from the US and you want new generation filters, but you don't really know how to get them, you can absolutely order this on the website and we will happily ship it to the US. We have many amazing US consumers, which I'm always so grateful for. And that's a way of getting your new generation filter action. Obviously, this is a British brand as opposed to Korean, but definitely following that Korean ethos of new generation filters, super lightweight finish. And actually works out slightly cheaper than Korean sunscreens because you're getting 100ml here as opposed to the 50ml that you get in the Korean sunscreens for a similar price. So double the product, meaning it goes that little bit further. That's one workaround that you can do. But I wanted to film this video to say, if you're shopping Korean sunscreens in 2026, make sure you know what you're getting. Reach out to the retailers and say, which version are you sending me? I need to know what I'm putting on my skin. They will be able to tell you, and that way we can shop strategically. Just make sure that we're covering all the bases and know what we're getting. If you're watching this from the US, like I say, there is no blame leveled at the US consumer, who I know are as keen as the rest of the world to get these new generation filters. It's to do with the outdated regulations from the FDA. But just know that the US versions of these sunscreens, while they might not be perfect or as good as the Korean versions, they are still better than some of the things on the market, and 2 thin layers versus 1 thicker layer is going to deliver you a much nicer application. That's just a little hack that I can share with you guys. I wanted to film this to coincide with the virality that is that Numbuzin sunscreen. It's taken off and there's a lot of talk online about it, and I thought I could sit down and explain it to you guys so we know where we stand and we know how to ultimately be informed as consumers to get exactly what we want and preserve our hard-earned coin. Hopefully you find this video useful, but let me know if you want like a follow-on, if you want to know any recommendations for the best US sunscreens. If that would help you in any way whatsoever, let me know down in the comments section below. And wherever you are in the world, guys, stay safe, stay well, I love your skin. Take care. Bye.